You know, they say the definition of insanity is doing the exact same thing over and over again, but expecting a different result. Well, in the auto industry, that definition has a face and a name: Henrik Fisker. This is the story of how a certified design genius got the world to hand him billions of dollars, not once, but twice, and how he managed to drive both of his car companies right off a cliff.
I mean, just think about that for a second. How is it even possible? How does someone so celebrated, so trusted, fail on such a monumental scale? Twice. Well, the answer isn't really in the failures themselves. It's in the success that came first. To understand the collapse, you have to understand the almost cult-like belief people had in the man himself.
It all started with the vision. See, before Henrik Fisker was ever a CEO, he was an artist, a truly brilliant one. Investors and customers weren't just buying into a business plan, they were buying a piece of his genius. They were in love with his portfolio. And can you blame them? Just look at this list. The BMW Z8, an instant classic, a James Bond car for crying out loud. The Aston Martin DB9 and V8 Vantage, I mean, they're still two of the most beautiful cars ever made, period. He even did some of the first design work on the Tesla Model S. This guy wasn't some dreamer tinkering in a garage. This was automotive royalty.
But right there, that's the fatal flaw in this entire story. Because having an eye for a beautiful curve is a completely different universe from understanding supply chains, logistics, and the brutal, unforgiving reality of manufacturing. A beautiful drawing is one thing. A functioning car that doesn't fall apart, that's something else entirely. And this is where the whole dream begins to crack.
Fisker's grand ambition would play out across two separate companies, each one betting everything on a single, game-changing car. First, the Karma, and then the Ocean.
And here's the first one, the Fisker Karma. You really have to give it to him. The thing was breathtaking. It looked like it drove straight out of the future. It was long, low, sleek. It was the promise of a green car that was also just ridiculously cool. This was the car that was supposed to prove saving the planet could be sexy.
So let's lay it out. Chapter 1, Fisker Automotive, from 2007 to 2014. Their big play was the Karma, a plug-in hybrid. After that went bust, he came back with Chapter 2, Fisker Inc., starting in 2016 with the all-electric Ocean SUV. Two different companies, two different technologies, and, as we'll see, the exact same disastrous pattern.
So how did two totally separate companies, launched years apart, end up driving off the exact same cliff? Well, it seems to be a toxic cocktail of some really bad luck and a whole lot of really bad execution. The first time around, it was almost like a disaster movie. First, their one and only battery supplier went bankrupt, which basically shut down the entire production line. Then, as if that wasn't enough, Hurricane Sandy slams the East Coast, floods a port, and completely destroys more than 300 brand new cars. Just like that. That single storm cost them $30 million they just didn't have. Production stopped, and bankruptcy was right around the corner.
Okay, but the second crash? There was no hurricane to blame this time. No, these wounds were completely self-inflicted. The Fisker Ocean was pushed out the door plagued with bugs. We're talking cars suddenly losing power on the freeway, brakes failing, hoods just flying open while you're driving. And then came the final nail in the coffin. A huge tech reviewer drops a video calling it, and I quote, "the worst car I've ever reviewed. The stock price cratered. It was over."
You know, this one quote from a Reuters article about the first car, the Karma, basically tells the entire story. It said, beneath the world-class skin was a rudimentary machine that needed several years of engineering refinement. That's it. That's the core problem that killed both companies. He sold a beautiful dream wrapped around a half-baked machine, twice.
But terrible engineering doesn't tell the whole story. To go bankrupt twice, you need a special kind of talent for burning through cash. And believe me, the numbers here are just staggering.
For the first company alone, investors and the US government pumped in $1.4 billion. Let that sink in, $1.4 billion, with a B. That's more than enough money to get a car company off the ground.
So where did it all go? Well, it turns out they weren't actually building a business. They were building a bonfire for all that cash. Internal documents later showed that for every single Karma they sold, they lost at least $35,000. They were literally paying people to take their cars.
And a massive piece of that funding pie? A $529 million loan from the US Department of Energy, your tax dollars. The government had to freeze the loan when the company kept missing its goals, and in the end, taxpayers were left holding the bag for $139 million.
And here we go again, the definition of insanity. You'd think they'd learn, right? Nope. The second company was apparently just as bad, with reports claiming their financial controls were so sloppy they literally lost track of millions of dollars in customer payments. They just vanished. It wasn't just a mistake, it was a repeat offense. Look, when a company like this implodes, investors get burned, sure. But the real victims? They're the thousands of everyday people who believed the hype, who bought the vision, and who are now left with the consequences.
This comment from an online car forum just perfectly captures the fear that every single Fisker owner is living with right now. He wrote, "A 2.5-ton SUV that's one software fault away from the scrapyard." I mean, imagine spending all that money, and now the company is gone, there's no service, no parts, no support. You just have a very expensive, very heavy lawn ornament.
And this whole situation exposes a terrifying new problem in the modern car world. So many features in the Fisker Ocean, even the key fob that lets you in the door, need to connect to the company's computer servers to work. When the company goes bankrupt, they stop paying for those servers. The servers go dark, and your car becomes a useless 2.5-ton brick overnight.
Now, there was a tiny bit of good news. A last-minute deal was made in the bankruptcy to keep those servers running for 5 more years. So thousands of cars were saved from getting bricked for now. It's a temporary lifeline for these owners, but you can be sure the clock is ticking. So when you step back and look at the whole picture, the gorgeous designs, the shoddy engineering, the financial chaos, and the fact that it all happened twice, you just can't help but come back to that old saying about insanity.
Here's the cycle, laid bare. The idea was always brilliant, a beautiful car that's good for the planet. But the execution was always a complete disaster, a mess of bad engineering and even worse financial management. And so the result was always the same: bankruptcy, billions of dollars gone, and thousands of angry customers holding the bill.
After watching this train wreck happen in slow motion, not once, but twice, what's the big takeaway from the whole Fisker saga?
I think the lesson is pretty clear. A great idea isn't a great business, and being a brilliant designer does not make you a great CEO. A car company is so much more than just a pretty sketch. It's a brutal, complex machine of engineering, quality control, and financial discipline. Fisker failed at all three, twice. And for the roughly 7,000 owners who bought into that beautiful vision, they're the ones left paying a very real and very expensive price for his hubris.